What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to JJD TV. I'm your host Josh, and us Canadians must be ecstatic because over the November World Cup qualifying window, we took 6 points from a possible 6 points and sit first place in World Cup qualifying for the CONCACAF region. But now it's time to focus back on club football, and here is going to be your Canadian men's national team update from November 17th to November 22nd. So if you guys like this type of content, which is what we do each and every week where we update you with how your Canucks abroad played over the weekend, then be sure to drop a like, guys, on this video and drop a sub as well, as we're getting dangerously close to 7,000 subscribers. So hopefully you guys are going to enjoy this episode. Let's get into the update now. Alright guys, like we always do with our Canadian men's national team abroad update, we're going to start with our big five, and we're going to start with Alfonzo Davies. Alfonzo Davies did not start the match, which was expected after he played the majority of both matches in Edmonton. Richards got the start at left back, and he was eventually subbed off in the 52nd minute where Davies came on. Davies didn't have a crazy impact on the match, but he had an 87% pass completion. He created one chance, 33 touches on the ball, 2 recoveries, but unfortunately for Bayern, they lost 2-1 to Augsburg and now sit 9-1-2. Still sit first in the table, but the Bundesliga standings are definitely wide open right now. Augsburg, to their credit, played a perfect counter-attacking football, lining up in the 4-4-2 and just hitting on the break and the counterattack when they had the opportunity. Augsburg was surprisingly the winners of this match, considering they had a very poor start to the Bundesliga season. It's definitely a match that Davies, Bayern, and Nagelsmann are going to want to forget, and they're hoping to get back to winning ways next weekend. Moving on over to Jonathan David and his side Lille as they drew 2-2 to Monaco. It was a good little matchup. Jonathan David opened the scoring with a nice composed penalty before launching on to a nice little through ball. He bodied off a couple of players before sliding it through the wickets of the keeper to make it 2-0 for Lille. It was a perfect start for Jonathan David and company as they looked to get back to winning ways. But unfortunately for Lille, Monaco battled back into the match, and even going down to 10 men, Ben Yedder came back and drew it up 2-2. Very frustrating for Lille as David played 80 minutes, had a 78% pass completion. He had 21 touches on the ball, so not a lot of touches, but still was able to score 2 goals. He created 2 chances for himself, 4 total shots, and had a man of the match performance. Lille now sit 12th in the table with a 4-5-5 record. Really good stuff there from Jonathan David as he scores his 9th and 10th goal of the season. He's absolutely killing it in Ligue 1 this season, and with it, got some transfer speculation as Inter Milan are apparently rumored to potentially target Jonathan David as early as January. I thought that was a very interesting name. There's going to be a ton of clubs that are going to be interested in Jonathan David. I thought AC Milan would have been a realistic target for him, considering that AC Milan has 2 very aging strikers in Zlatan and Olivier Giroud, but Inter do play in that 2-striker system up front with Edin Dzeko and Lautaro Martinez, so it does seem like a little bit of a fit, but I want to let you guys know that there is some potential transfer interest in Jonathan David. I want to hear what you guys think in the comments. Who's a club that you guys think that Jonathan David should potentially look to go to? Inter Milan, for me, with the 2-striker system, does make sense. I think that could be a good little fit for him. But it's interesting, and let me know also when you want Jonathan David to go. If you're looking at maybe going for a January move, or if you want to see out the season with Lille and hopefully go for that top goal scorer in the league season. Moving on over to Atiba Hutchinson and Besiktas. This is another frustrating weekend for Atiba Hutchinson and, of course, Kyle Larin. But we're going to start with Hutch. As Hutch started the match, he was unfortunately subbed off at halftime. He lined up as a CDM in a 4-1-4-1 system. He had 27 touches on the ball and 85% pass completion with 5 recoveries, but didn't have a massive impact on that match. Kyle Larin had more of an impact on that match. He started as a left midfielder in still that 4-1-4-1 system. He played all 90 minutes with 47 touches on the ball. He had a 67% pass completion with 2 shots, but unfortunately for Besiktas, they lost 2-0 to now sit 9th in the table with a 6-2-5 record and losing 4 straight competitive matches. Not a good field right now in Besiktas, and Hutchinson and Larin are hopefully going to have to find a way to get this club back going, as they're both very important players. Hutch captained the side today, and hopefully some leadership crew are going to have to get together, find a way to get Besiktas back to winning ways, and hopefully Kyle Larin, again, with good goal scoring for him for Canada, can find a way to get some back in the net, because they're going to need that if Besiktas wants to turn this season around. And to round out our big 5, which I guess this week is kind of a big 5, big 6, we're going to mention 2 more players, but neither player featured, as we're going to mention Tajon Buchanan, whose side New England has not featured yet in the MLS playoffs, and Stefan Eustachio, who did not feature. He was rested after playing a ton of minutes as well for Canada in the World Cup qualifiers, as Pacos de Ferreira lost 4-1 to Benfica to get knocked out of the Portuguese Cup. We've been getting comments as well for Junior Hoylett, and still an update for you guys that he is still injured, but There's more news on the other side of things, as unfortunately for Reading, they got hit with a 6-point deduction. It's unfortunate. It was because of financial protocol, which they broke. That now puts them a little bit closer to relegation. So no real update on Hoylett, but his club situation got a little bit worse. But I think Reading still have a solid enough side to avoid relegation. But it doesn't look like they're going to be competing for the playoffs because of this 6-point deduction, which could also lead to another 6-point deduction next season. Moving on over to League One and Theo Corbeanu, who's finally nailed down a starting spot at Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday at the weekend took on Accrington, where they won 3-2. Theo Corbeanu started and played 64 minutes as a left wing back in a 3-4-1-2 system. Sheffield Wednesday, with this big win, is fantastic for them as they're getting closer to that playoff spot. They now sit in 7th place with a 7-8-3 record, and it's really good for Corbeanu, who's now developing a little bit, playing as a left wing back or right wing back, which is 2 systems and 2 formations that are very important for the Canadian men's national team. And I think Corbeanu is going to have a real shot at making the Canada squad for the January World Cup qualifying window. Taking a look at our dual national, Daniel Jebsen and his side, Burton Albion, at the weekend, as Jebsen started and played all 90 minutes. Unfortunately, though, Burton lost over the weekend 1-0 to MK Dons. He was playing as a striker in a 3-4-1-2 system. He created 3 shots for himself, had 31 touches, so was a little bit more involved in this match, had 1 out of 3 successful dribbles, but unfortunately with that loss, Burton now sit 15th in the table with a 6-4-8 record. Awesome news for the Canadian men's national team, as Scott Kennedy has returned to action for Jan Regensburg over the weekend as they took on Hamburg. It was not the perfect return for Scott Kennedy as they lost 4-1, but he did have an okay little matchup in there, as Kennedy had a 75% pass completion. He had 57 touches on the ball, 7 long balls. He won 7 out of 12 duels. He had 5 recoveries, with winning 2 out of 4 successful tackles. With that loss, though, Jan Regensburg sit 4th in the table with a 7-4-3 record. Not the perfect start and not the perfect return, like I said, but it's still great to see him back on the pitch, because Scott Kennedy is going to be very important for the Canadian men's national team in the January window. Heading on over to Belgium now, we're going to take a look at EK Ubok, whose side Genk is really struggling in the league. EK's been primarily used as a substitute this season, and it is the trend, unfortunately, for him continued, as he did not start the match, but he was subbed on in the 76th minute and had really no impact on the match. He had 0 shots. He did have 100% pass completion, but did not have very many passes. He had 3 touches on the ball as Genk lost 2-0, and they sit 8th in the table with a 6-3-6 record. Heading on over to Greece now in Panathinaikos, we're going to take an eye on Derek Cornelius, whose side has been in dreadful form, but they finally get back to winning ways with a 1-0 victory. Derek Cornelius started that match and played all 90 minutes, picking up a yellow card, getting the clean sheet as he started as a center back in a 4-3-3 system. With that, they go up to 12th place in the table with a 2-2-6 record. Really good stuff there from Derek Cornelius. I still think he could be a very important player for the Canadian national team in the January window, especially with the potential MLS players not being used to their full potential. Cornelius has a good opportunity to get there, and getting performances like this, getting clean sheets like this, is a great way to do it. Moving on over to Portugal, we're going to take a look at Steven Vitoria and Moreirense, as at the weekend they were in the Portuguese Cup against Vitoria de Guimarães, where they won 3-2 to move on to the next round. It was a great performance collectively, especially from Steven Vitoria, as he started as a center back in a 4-2-3-1. He scored a goal which ended up being the game-winning goal at the time, putting them up 3-0. They were able to pull 2 goals back, as the final score was 3-2, but a great performance from Vitoria, getting on the score sheet and moving on to the next round. Moving on over to Scotland now, we're going to take a look at Scott Arfield and Rangers as they took on Hibernian in a League Cup semi-finals. Scott Arfield started in this match and played 69 minutes, scoring a goal, having a pretty solid performance. But unfortunately, Rangers lost 3-1 to get knocked out in the semifinals, a match which you would almost expect Rangers to win. Maybe it happened to do with the fact that their manager moved on, as some of you guys may or may not know. Steven Gerrard has moved on and taken the head coaching role at Aston Villa. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has now come on. He used to play for the Rangers. He's now managing them. It's great to see. I think it's a perfect little assignment and appointment there. So we're going to have to take a look at how Scott Arfield's role could potentially change under new management, but it's good to see him starting the match, scoring a goal, because we still don't know. We're pretty sure we won't see him again as a Canadian men's national team, but there is a chance in the January window, with again MLS players potentially not being available or not being on form, that he may have a role to play, but we're going to have to wait and see. Taking a look at the other semi-final, it was St. Johnstone taking on Celtic. We're going to take a look at David Wotherspoon, who had some very scary moments in this match, as Wotherspoon started and played 51 minutes as a center mid in a 3-5-2 setup. He unfortunately went down in the 51st minute with an injury. A stretcher was called on, but it was encouraging to see that Wotherspoon did not need the stretcher to get off the pitch, and he was spotted at the end of the match without crutches, but did have some knee support. Celtic went on to win 1-0 in the semi-finals to knock out St. Johnstone, so the cup success for St. Johnstone and David Wotherspoon ends there, and we wish the best for Wotherspoon because he could again be a very important player come January, so we hope that knee injury is not too serious. Moving on over to Serbia now and taking a look at Marin Borean. As many expected, he was rested over the weekend, but it did not slow down Red Stars. They won 5-1. They sit second in the table with a 13-2-1 record. So Borean, not too missed there, but hopefully will be able to come back as the starting keeper there and his side still push for the championship. Heading on over to Turkey now, after taking already a look at Larin and Hutch with Besiktas not having the luck, we're going to look at a player who did have some luck over the weekend, and that was once again Sam Adakubi, who was the star performer in my opinion for the Canadian men's national team over the 2 matches in Edmonton. He got back, he started as a left back in a 4-2-3-1, playing all 90 minutes. He had a 90% pass completion, he won 6 out of 10 duels, he had 1 interception, 2 clearances, 2 recoveries, 45 touches on the ball, as Hasanspor won 3-1 to sit second in the table with an 8-2-3 record. The only side that's really showing massive consistency, Adakubi with a strong performance once again, and I think he's going to become a very, very important player for the Canadian men's national team. He already showed that he could do it, and now knowing again with the MLS players potentially, that's a big question mark of how often and how much will the MLS players be used in January. Sam Adakubi, in my opinion, is going to be a lock at the left back position for Canada. Taking a look at another dual national, Fredy Caagu at the weekend as his side Fenerbahce took on Galatasaray in a very tasty little matchup there. It was an interesting match. Fredy Caagu started the match and played all 90 minutes as a right back in a 4-2-3-1 system, showing his versatility once again as we've seen him mostly play as a left wing back this season. He was able to start as a right back, played very well in this matchup as Fenerbahce won 2-1 against Galatasaray, which was pretty surprising considering Fenerbahce went down to 10 men and found a way in injury time to get that second goal, to get 3 massive points. Caagu played pretty well, getting 74% pass completion, 64 touches on the ball. He had 1 shot. He won 7 out of 12 duels. He had 3 out of 3 tackles completed, 6 recoveries. And with that win, Fenerbahce sit 5th in the table with a 7-2-4 record. It's going to be interesting to see if he does end up committing for the Canadian men's national team. There's always a chance, especially with the rise of this Canadian men's national team. But there's still pretty tough competition. I think it'll be curious to see how Turkey does and if they qualify for this World Cup. If not, it could potentially open up a good opportunity to get him for potentially the March window. Alright guys, before we close out this episode of Canadian men's national team abroad, we're going to take a look at some North American action, starting with Dane St. Clair and Minnesota United. Dane St. Clair did start this match and played all 90 minutes as unfortunately Minnesota United lost away to Portland 3-1 to get eliminated from the MLS Cup. Staying in the MLS, we're going to take a look at the Vancouver Whitecaps, the only Canadian side to qualify for the playoffs, but it was short-lived as they took on a very tough Sporting KC side. It was a good little matchup, but it wasn't enough as Vancouver was the away side. They lost 3-1 as well to get eliminated from the MLS Cup once again. Heading on over to Canada now, we're going to take a look at the Canadian Championship, which saw Montreal take on Toronto. It was a good little affair. Toronto did not have a strong season and arguably really did not deserve to win this match, which they didn't. Montreal had a solid season. It was unfortunate for them. They slipped out and didn't make the MLS Cup, but with that, they were able to celebrate as they were definitely the deserving winners as they won 1-0 to win the Canadian Championship. So big shout out, especially to some of our Canadians on there. Kamal Miller, who's a player who's just been thriving this season. It's great to see him get his hands on that. Joel Waterman, who's a player I think potentially could get a shout for the outside right center back position as he starts in that position for Montreal in a back 3. So big shout out to Montreal and of course a lot of the players in that side who definitely deserve this match, and TFC hopefully will be able just to refresh and start new next season, potentially with Bob Bradley as their new manager. And finally, taking a look at a little CPL action over the weekend, which saw 2 semifinal matchups. Pacific beating Calvary 2-1, the away side, which was pretty impressive for Pacific. They took the match. It was 1-1 going to extra time where Pacific won it there to move on to the finals. And Forge showing the consistency as always, winning 3-1 at home against York, which sets up a nice juicy final, which in my opinion were the 2 best teams this season, with Pacific taking on Forge. It's going to be a good little matchup. I think you might know who I'm going for, but let me know who you guys are going for because it's going to be a good matchup and I can't wait to watch the finals to see who takes it home between Forge and Pacific. So guys, with that being said, brings us to the conclusion of this week's episode of the Canadian men's national team players abroad, as well as a sprinkle of a little at home action as well. So guys, let me know what you thought about a lot of different storylines over the weekend for your Canucks playing abroad. Let me know especially what's going on with Jonathan David and who you guys want to see him potentially go to. And if you're, cheering for Forge FC, let me know in the comments below, guys. But hopefully you did enjoy this episode. If you did, as always, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub as well, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Cheers, friends.